Let's get into your why and help our listeners better understand the mission you are on today. Take us back in time. What led up to the tipping point in your relationship?
The night my life changed forever. And I look at this now as a blessing for an unfortunate event. I was out for a routine date night with my wife, and the date nights at this point they're about a Band-Aid for our marriage. My wife wants to grow and start building this business, and I immediately just tell her no. Having a couple drinks in me, just see red, right? So that leads into an argument. We leave, we go home, we proceed with the argument upstairs. We're just screaming and yelling at each other. Before I close the door, I just immediately hit this pot that's on the dresser. It hits my wife in the face. 20 minutes later, I hear the doorbell ring and I see flashlight in the window, and I realize that my wife called the cops. She runs past me, looks up at me at the stairs. I say, please don't open that door. You're going to ruin our lives. And she's like, no, you've ruined your life. I only gave myself two options. One, I can just fold, or two, you can man the fuck up. You can grow up. You can get spiritually connected. You can show up every single day as the best husband, father, and person you can be, and have massive amounts of pain and purpose. And then you can go teach this stuff so no one else makes this mistake, because eventually I'm going to tell my kids this story. So when they come to me with something hard and they, don't know what to do, I can tell them how I got through my hard situation. So I can now look them in the eye and say, Dad didn't quit. And this is what I've done for it.
This is Sparta! Welcome back to Spartan Leadership. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick. All right, Spartan leaders, for those of you who have been mentored by me or heard me speak, I love a good why. And today, that is what you're going to hear. The passionate, at times dark, and more importantly, tenacious story of my brother, Chris. Firefighter by trade, SHF first responder by nature, and devoted husband and father by God. Please join me in welcoming Chris Flores. How you doing, brother?
Thanks for having me, man. It's great to connect.
Absolutely, as always. So I want to talk a little bit how we got to know each other, and that was through the Arte Syndicate. I've been, we've had numerous conversations, and really respect you and what you're doing with Superhuman Fathers. I want to get into that right next. But also the vulnerability that you're going to share today is a different side of Chris than most of others seen before. And really appreciate you taking that time and opening yourself up to tell this story. But before we get into all that, I want to talk about Superhuman Fathers, because I think it's just a very cool group of people that you're a part of. And I know that some of the story that you are going to share today led you into this, but SHF first responder equals Superhuman Father Coach, right?
Correct. Yeah.
All right. Got that right. Mm-hmm. So talk to us a little bit about the Superhuman Fathers. What is that?
All right. Yeah. Superhuman Fathers started about 2 years ago by Kyle Carnahan, who's a founder, who is an ex-fireman now. He just quit his full-time job. He worked in Orange County, California as a fireman. I work in San Diego County as a fireman. And so what Superhuman Fathers is basically a highly disciplined men's accountability group. And we do that with the forefront of focusing on our wives, our kids, and developing yourself into the highest possible version of yourself, turning it around and giving that back to your family, faith, community, your workplace. We use health and fitness as our main primary tool. So it's a tool that we use to kind of cultivate habits, skills, discipline, consistency. So we run about 4 or 5 Zoom calls during the week to connect with our members, to share struggles, provide solutions. We have accountability marriage forums, daily action forums, and it's just kind of it's basically extreme accountability and discipline. And we have just about 600 members now, and it's grown from when I jumped on at 80 members, and it's kind of just taken off in the last year to just about 600 members. And the wins out of there, we're known for our physical transformations. But the best part about it is the transformations within the household. So the marriage wins, the reconnection with your children, the commitment to faith, increasing finances, and just aligning yourself and your wife to raise, your sons, your daughters, and just make them a value to the community. So that's a gist or a snippet of what Superhuman Fathers is.
I love it. I've always loved you guys' mission. So I know the answer to this, but I want to make sure that everyone gets your answer from this. Why do you start with health and fitness as the cornerstone?
So we start with health and fitness cornerstone because if you're going to lead your family, you got to be able to lead yourself, and you lead yourself through your daily habits and disciplines. So if you can control kind of what you put in your mouth, how you show up to the gym, and the physical representation of you, you're of value now to those around you, not just physically, but mentally. So what it does for you on the mental side of just getting up our guys get up every day, 4 or 5 in the morning, Monday through Sunday, 365, every single day with a purpose and a reason. And that starts with our daily non-negotiables. So if you can prioritize health and fitness, it just has a compound effect, and it just makes everything throughout the rest of your day just that much easier.
Love it. And I totally agree. I think that, man, part of the reason I start with health and fitness with the people that I coach as well is if you can transform your body, you have this realization or a cognition, if you will, that you can transform other parts of your life. And so whether that be your marriage, whether that be your money, whether that be your job, whether that be your relationship with your kids, once you realize that you have a power within you to transform one part of your life, you're like, even if you don't have a cognition, you may ask the question, I wonder if I could do this in other parts of my life.
100%. And especially we went through this at the beginning when we started this, COVID was hitting, right? Or it was hitting. So a lot of guys like, man, I gained 40 pounds during COVID, or I had back surgery. It's like, I always tell my guys with health and fitness, I'm like, how does that affect what you put in your mouth? That is no degree of your nutrition. So if you can control that, you're going to produce a physical result, and that's going to mentally sharpen and harden you. So when COVID hits an outside factor, that doesn't control how I show up every single day. It doesn't control what I put in my mouth. It doesn't control what I read, who I surround myself with. So that's the message we're trying to instill every day.
Oh, that's really good. Well, you and I sit here today. I think we'd both like to think we're superhuman fathers now, but that hasn't always been the case. Let's get into your why and help our listeners better understand the mission you are on today. And before we hear your story, I believe you have some statistics you want to share. And for those of you, before we even get into the statistics, Chris's story is going to be hard for some of you to hear. But the reality is more people than we would like to admit can relate to what we're about to hear. So, Chris, if you would, open our listeners' eyes to some of the stats regarding domestic abuse.
Okay. Yeah. So my story stems from domestic violence and where I'm at too of why. So these stats they mean a lot to me because they're heavy, and it shows the cycle that we are continuing to break, my wife and I, and then helping others. So 25% of domestic violence, ends in divorce. One in 3 people have a domestic violence story that goes kind of untold or unreported. And then if you look at the fire service in general, 25% of divorce rates come from the fire service as well, as far as just your profession at nature there. And then the big, huge stat is like, if you look at divorce rates all across the nation, 75% of those come from lack of commitment. So I just stacked on all 3 of those things. And I was just destined for a divorce, right? So this is what led me up to this domestic violence issue. And then my story is basically how, why, and then how I got through it.
Man, that's powerful. Just hearing those stats, you're right, they are heavy. I guess the one I'm surprised with, that first one you read, was that only 25% of domestic violence ends in divorce?
Correct.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I would have thought that stat was much higher, just being that, it's such a heavy thing and such an impactful thing for, regardless of the person being abused, right? So, take us back in time. What led up to the tipping point in your relationship?
Yeah. So all this is, first of all, 100% on me, and before I share this, thank you to my wife, who eventually is going to listen to this. You're the strongest person, way stronger than me. So you're the strongest person for dealing with all this. You talk about mental trauma. It's like, my wife's been through the ringer. So thank you, Kimberly, for proceeding through this whole process and watching both of us grow. So how this initially started, and me in general, my job in general at the fire service, when it's not uncommon to work 3-4 days in a row. You come home, I immediately put my wife in the service role. So I came home, it's like, okay, I need this, I need a break. we're doing this. It's all my plan. So control started to take over. I've always been a jealous person. When I come home, I have expectations of what it should be. When my wife was just running the show for the 4 or 5 days I'm gone with the kids, I open the door and I fuck it all up because it's what I want, right? The control part. My wife owes me, time to myself. My wife owes me sex because I'm gone. My wife owes me whatever I can think of that day and how I felt, right? So I had no control over my emotions. I had no standards. My discipline was lacking. And you do that for a week, a month, a year, and you start compounding that. Me and my wife have been married just 9 years or almost 10 years. We have a 7 and a 4-year-old. And you start doing that every single week, just compounding that. And then eventually those little fights start breaking, right? And those little fights turn into big fights, which turn into the divorce word, which turn into affecting your children. So when your children hear you argue and fight, it wasn't uncommon for them to see us yell and scream at each other. And I'm going to sign up for overtime because I don't want to be home to be around this because you're doing this, when in reality it was all my fault. So I take full responsibility for that side of it. And what led to this? You want me to get into the actual night incident?
Yeah, I think let's go there. Yeah, because I have a lot of questions that'll happen after that. So just go right into your story in the night that everything kind of hit the tipping point.
The night my life changed forever. And I look at this now as a blessing for an unfortunate event. I was out for a routine date night with my wife, and the date nights at this point they're about a Band-Aid for our marriage, just some time away. And we weren't really emotionally connected. We weren't aligned spiritually. We weren't into the faith side yet. We were just kind of going through the motions of life, of marriage. And it's not a good way to live, man. It's a disservice to the kids. So we're out for a date night. We get in an argument because my wife, remember, jealous person, I'm the asshole. My wife wants to grow and start building this business. And I immediately just tell her no, because it's going to take away from probably me when I'm thinking, right? So we see this business partner friend at a restaurant for date night. And she's like, I can't wait to see you Thursday to talk about our business. And she left. I'm like, did you commit to that without telling me? So me having a couple drinks in me, just see red, right? Just see red, your fault, pointing, you. So that leads into an argument. We leave, we go home. We proceed with the argument upstairs. The kids are sleeping. We relieve the sitter. And then the lights are off. I'm going to go sleep downstairs because we're just screaming and yelling at each other. Before I close the door, I just immediately hit this pot that's on the dresser. It hits my wife in the face, and I go downstairs. 20 minutes later, I hear the doorbell ring, and I see a flashlight in the window. And I realized that my wife called the cops. So at that point, I go upstairs and I asked my wife, I said, did you call the cops? And she's like, yes, I want you out of this fucking house. And I remember she's on the phone with my mom, just like screaming, yelling, like, I can't, he's out of control. He's out of control. And she runs past me down the stairs, and she looks up at me at the stairs. I say, please don't open that door. You're going to ruin our lives. And she's like, no, you've ruined your life. And she opened the door. And you want to talk about a low point? The lowest point as a man, I'm sitting in my living room, handcuffs on. My 2 boys are a couple 100 feet upstairs sleeping from me. I got 2 cops standing over my wife. She's got a swollen eye. And there I am, man. It was the lowest point of my life. Neighbors are outside. We got 4 or 5 cop cars there. I'm just like, what is going on? My world's upside down right now based on my actions. So 20 minutes later, I obviously get arrested. I get thrown in Riverside County Jail, and get a week-long restraining order. I can't come home, can't see my wife, can't see my kids, no contact order. And I'm standing there naked in the prison, waiting my orange jumpsuit, and they're searching me as I'm naked. I'm just standing there. All I can think about is, man, I told my 2 kids I'd take them to get Halloween costumes. It's about 2 a.m. at this point. I was like, in 8 hours from now, I'm supposed to be taking my kids to get Halloween costumes, and you failed as a father, as a man, as a husband. So I get thrown in the jail cell. Next morning I get out. I got nowhere to go. I can't go home, got no clothes, nothing. 24 hours goes by. I got to be in Arizona for a work conference event for like a command and control kind of leadership, how to run an incident. So I'm a massive fake, right? So I go to this 3-day conference in Arizona, probably honestly thinking that there was somewhere to go, right? Because I couldn't go home. So another low point, come back, I got to knock on my parents' door. I got to look my dad in the eye and tell him what I just did as a man. And my parents loved me, man. They hammered me pretty good, and allowed me to come in and stay a couple of days before I went back to work. And when I came home, got to see my kids again. It was extremely, uncomfortable. And the little tiny mini fights starting, right? Because I didn't take responsibility. I'm like, why did you call? Why did you do this? Right. So the cycle started repeating. And through the whole year, I had to take domestic violence courses for a year. And you have to attend every week, every Wednesday for a year straight. If you miss 3, you're out and back to court. So I remember, like, at this point in stage, I was at the busiest fire station in our city. So I wouldn't eat. I'd run into my room, hide, jump on my Zoom call, try to get this thing in. And I was like, man, this is enough. Like, what do? I can't do this. I'm spiraling. My kids don't see me. My wife doesn't love me, all this stuff. So I said that hard conversation. This is when everything snapped. I committed myself to becoming a part of the church. I looked at myself in the mirror and just said, how are you going to handle the situation? There's 2 options. So I only gave myself 2 options. One, I can just fold. I can say, hey, man, you got a good career. You're still at the fire department. Your kids will love you either way. You can get a divorce. You'll figure it out. You can get another job. You can live in an apartment. Or 2, and I almost went that route. Or 2, you can man the fuck up. You can grow up. You can get spiritually connected. You can align yourself. You can show up every single day as the best husband, father, and person you can be, and have massive amounts of pain and purpose. And then you can go teach this stuff. So no one else makes this mistake. Fireman, guy that works at a 9 to 5, whoever, you never make this mistake again. Because eventually I'm going to tell my kids this story. So when they come to me with something hard and they, don't know what to do, I can tell them how I got through my hard situation. So I can now look them in the eye and say, Dad didn't quit. And this is what I've done for it. So that year went by, and in and out of the courthouse area, spent tons of money on the lawyers inside like that. And I kept this story like in the dark. I was so ashamed to tell people this story. And then now more and more I tell it, the less it owns me. And I started diving in deep for people to outside resources rather than traditional counseling, for people to help me, to help my wife. And we've lost a lot of really good friends. Our neighbors don't talk to us, but we've gained so many people. And so when people say, oh, you're a superhuman father, like, they don't know the story because they never told it. It's because I was so ashamed and embarrassed. So everyone sees this like Instagram profile that knows the story and say, this guy's a fraud, this guy's a fake. It's like, no, I'm not by any means. Like when I'm ready to tell this story, I hope it can impact you, and I'll never resent anyone for disowning me or my wife for staying with me. I think she's the strongest person alive. So now I'm creating this narrative in my head. Like, man, you're gonna get fired from the fire service because you got a domestic violence felony against you. You got all this stuff going down. What do you got 2 kids, you got to feed these kids. How are you going to get money? So I hired a coach. I'm like, what am I good at? Or what do I like to do? I like health and fitness. So I hired Wes Watson as a coach, told him my story. He's like, holy shit, dude. Like, I got the guy for you, dude. If you want to help dads and your mission is to help fathers and never make this mistake, go check out my boy, Kyle Carnahan with Superhuman Fathers. He's brand new, just started. So I just started bugging Kyle, like, because this is way more than the physical transformations are working out. This is from a deep pain and purpose. So I just bugged him. Finally, I said, hey, dude, I'll work for free. I don't care. So I started working with Kyle and his brother, and I jumped in at about 80 members, and I just took off from there. And I started doing all the training, the nutrition, the Zoom, started helping people without telling them my story. I would just help their marriages. I'd get all these victories and wins of texts and calls of people saying, thank you. I'm connected with my kids. I'm connected with my wife. Where are you getting this from? You know what I mean? And deep down, I knew the truth. And then I started the first responders group, to say, hey, let's get a bunch of type A badasses in this group. It's like, let's really dive into the taboo subject, whether it's domestic violence, alcohol, porn, gambling, whatever it may be. Like, we got some people in there with some massive struggles and issues that have massive victories, just like my story from it. So we have cops, military, firemen, police, all this stuff in there. We run Zoom calls on Fridays. We help all these people because it's not very, it's, you know, you go around the firehouse table and you tell people that you journal every morning, you write down your thoughts, you pray, you do all this stuff. It's like people are like, what? You know, that's not traditional type A firehouse talk, but it needs to happen. I think this story needs to be told and needs to be heard, and people to understand the totality of the event and what has come from it. And I think your trauma, it can either be transmitted into your kids or your wife, and I could have totally screwed them up, generational curses and family tree, and my kids could have carried this with them to their kids and over, could repeat this cycle forever. Or I can make it transformative and like really just explode this so they can look at their dad and be like, wow, Dad, how the hell did you do that? How did you get through that? Well, I took ownership, took accountability. I disciplined my mind, I disciplined my body. And then I committed myself to the Lord. And the relationships I built through church, the relationships I built through Arte with you, has just completely transformed my life. You know, you go to see me 2 years ago, I was a whole new person, and you're most qualified to teach the person you used to be.
Yeah.
And I used to be fat, and I used to be undisciplined. I used to abuse alcohol. I used to have a big circle of friends that weren't really my friends. They encouraged me to drink. So now I can turn around like, well, I used to be you, dude. I used to be fat. I used to be not committed to my wife. So that is a snippet, I guess. There's a lot more too, as far as the deep work within SHF, but that is a massive story that has completely transformed my life.
Yeah, I'll try and keep my questions straight, but I wanted the audience to hear first. We started with Superhuman Fathers because I wanted to give you some context, and then, you know, dropped right into Chris's story, and that may have seemed abrupt, but Superhuman Fathers and his working for free and then continue to be impacted throughout is a big part of how he got himself through. So going back to that night, did you know you had hit her with the vase or jar or whatever it was? Or did you hit that and leave and not really know that it had flown across the room and hit her?
No, I knew, like, just that sound. It wasn't the sound of a wall. So I think deep down I knew.
Yeah. And then it was just interesting to hear, you know, I thought with maybe your reaction, did you call the cops that you may have not known, but good to know. So talking through to yourself on options 1 or 2, there's probably a few other options you could have given yourself, but options 1 or 2. In option 2, remember audience, option 1 was get a divorce, go get an apartment, then move on with his life. Option 2 was accept accountability, ownership, and try and fix things. At that point, you had no idea whether or not she wanted to fix things, correct?
Correct. Yeah,
so
she was ready to split.
Yeah. So you're choosing to go into, so option 1 by far is the easiest. And no, neither option's going to be easy, but I think, in my opinion, option 1's by far the easiest. If you have, on one hand, your spouse saying, I'm done, and your ego telling you, hey, why would I want to accept this or why would I want to accept ownership, accountability, and do all this work if she's already saying she's done? So option 2, you selected the harder path of the two, in my opinion, not knowing if she's going to stick around or not. So how many times did you question yourself, or did you question yourself after selecting and choosing to go all in on option 2?
Man, there was a ton of roadblocks in between, because again, I was so embarrassed and ashamed of this. When I'd find out, like, she would tell certain people, and I would blame or like judge her for telling people, like her friends or some co-workers or whatever it may be. I'm like, you told them, like, without, and then I would see red again, and we'd go backward, take 5 steps backward. Obviously it wasn't a domestic abuse red. It was more just like, I would just yell and lose my temper. I'm like, I can't believe you told, this person. It's none of their business. And again, this is because I wanted to hide it and suppress it like it never happened. But now I'll just tell the world, like, yep, that's what I did. And here's where I'm at now. So there was a ton of those little interjects in between, of her just trying to be heard so that she can heal. And that maybe that's her form of healing, which I didn't understand at the time, and I suppressed it.
But that really stemmed from your shame and guilt about the situation as a whole.
Correct. Yeah. Just embarrassed.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why it's taken such courage for you to talk about it now. So I applaud you for that. I can just imagine, because as you talked about some neighbors and some friends that have turned their back because this topic is, I don't even know if the right word is taboo. It's just a tough topic, right? Maybe there's a better word that I'm not coming to mind right now, but because when I think about, domestic abuse, like much like other type A men, probably even yourself now, like your fist balls up a little bit.
Oh, 100%.
Wanting to protect, not in a, like I'm saying, like man to man, like your fist balls up a little bit because, we're raised to protect the women in our lives. And so that's why it is such a tough topic and a shameful topic to have experienced or to even talk about for someone that has unfortunately committed that. So I think where I want to go next is like for you and your wife to overcome the backlash of that evening with yourself, one another, your families. Obviously you had to have that tough conversation with your dad man to man, because I know, if I was looking my dad in the eyes, he'd be, that's not how I raised you, look. And then the conversations that would ensue. So what did it take? You've talked a little bit about how you've committed to ownership and accountability, which if you can't take those two things first, there's no way you're going to overcome any situation. Okay. So I want to applaud Chris for that first and foremost, because most people would run and hide in that shame and guilt. But what did it take for you guys to overcome the backlash of that evening? First with you and your wife. Actually, you decide the order with your families, your wife, and your children. However you decide the order. Maybe there's a different order you want to go down to.
Yeah. Once we made that commitment together that we will, embody faith in our kids, and we're going to drown out all the outside noise, other people's opinions, stats, facts, whatever you may see, neighbors, friends. We lost a lot of really good friends, man, friends that were in our wedding that just, our kids grew up together. We knew these people before we had kids. So because we would get in arguments, like, can I go see her or this, whatever? I'm like, now we get angry, no, they don't support us. They're out. So once we finally just drowned out all the outside noise, we committed to ourselves, the Lord, and our kids. We're able to move forward together. So how we move forward is when we started Andy Frisella's 75 Hard program. We do that together. Now you want to talk about marriage counseling and stuff like that, do that program with your wife and your marriage will explode. So we did it together. We got up, 4 a.m, our kids are upstairs sleeping. We getting our personal development reading, acts of service. I do act of service for my wife every day, whether it's a text message, making coffee, a note, whatever it may be. You start compounding those weekly. And then we can combine that with just our circle of people who we surrounded ourselves with, Kyle and Whitney, people within the Superhuman Fathers community, RTA community. We started going to the RTA events. You just start getting people that want to see you win. So we're around people that want to see us win. And with our kids, we got them in, they were already in a private Christian school, but we really dove into what they were learning at school, because I didn't grow up going to church or anything like that. So it's cool to see our kids come home and they're teaching me about it. So how I did that was I commit to my children through being present, put my damn phone away, play Legos with your kids. And you make that as part of your daily priorities of what you're going to do with your kids every single day. So if I did that with my marriage, do it with my kids, I just pride myself on not missing. And you can do that every day. It's been almost 2 years since this event. I haven't missed a day. I don't say that to brag or egotistical, but I pride myself on not missing every single day to align me. And I don't plan on missing soon because I know it's at stake.
And you have 4 to 5 Zoom calls each week where you're either participant or leading, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really important in any recovery process. And I would say, this is kind of an analogous to, I'm not like an addict by any means, like, cause you weren't necessarily an addict and this was a one-time instance, but when addicts go through recovery, they actually, one of their tenets in the 12 steps is to help others. like Chris said before, is you're best equipped to help the previous version of yourself. So addicts help other addicts by helping them become sober. Chris is becoming a leader of men within the Superhuman Father community to make sure that he stays on track long term. Or am I speaking out of turn there? Or does that sound very, very familiar?
That's 100% spot on. Like, and for those listening with kids, like your son or your sons will become you. Your daughter's going to marry you. So like, what example are you providing? What systems and core values and standards do you operate off of every day? Because your kids are watching, man, every single day. And that's what I always like pride myself and think on. If I see myself slipping a little bit, I know it's at stake. So you got to find a higher purpose higher than yourself. If that's an outside source that's not faith-based, that's fine. But just realize none of this stuff that we teach within SHF, I know Josh probably the same way. It's not about you. It's about showing up for your wife and kids every day. When I open the door and I come to the firehouse now, like my wife's excited to see me. She can't wait to see me. My kids run up and give me big hugs. And it's like, and I just look for things like, what can I do? What kind of service can I provide? I'm happy to be home. It's like, what does my wife need? What do my kids need? What needs to get done? I don't need anything. I'm just here to serve them.
That's a good point. So maybe this is a good question to ask as far as granularity is concerned, and teaching, just teaching real snippets of what life was and what life is. What did your day look like 4 years ago? Like just your normal day. And then what does your day look like today?
Yeah. So I'll start my oldest son's 7, pre-kids. Man, my day was, I hang out with my buddies from the firehouse. We go drink, we go to the beach or something, or we go golf for 6 hours and drink. You come home, probably hungover the next morning, and then you repeat the cycle. You just do it over and over and over until you get consistent days off. Then you go on a trip that you probably didn't earn, and you drink on the trip, right? Like now or before, say 4 years ago, my kids are in school. I was probably just drifting, just floating, no real purpose or goal to obtain. I have a career. I'm secure there. Nothing's guaranteed, but you got kind of a guaranteed job at the firehouse with an income and a salary, like kind of just drifting and floating. There's no other outside purpose. Now my day is very structured. When I say I don't miss, that means I get up at 3:30, 4 a.m. I do my personal development reading. I do my journaling as far as kind of what I going to get done for the day, or how can I be a better husband or father. And then I roll that into checking in with my guys through SHF, and then I work out every day. I do all those things. I'm an active service for my wife. And then from there, we have so many people now. It's just more of a support role of how can I help other people. We just helped, it's not uncommon for us to help people in marriages through my story now, because I came out publicly within SHF. They just thought I was some workout guy. So I say, hey man, here's my story. Like, holy shit. Like that really kind of resonates now to where I'm at. This is why you can help tap into so many people, and I'm not a certified or licensed counselor, whatever you want to call it. I'm just operating off real life trauma. And if I can help just one person, that's a victory. We help guys, quit your vice, like vices. It could be alcohol, porn addiction. It could be gambling. It could be a lack of commitment to your wife, like whatever it may be. You have to be able to tell that and come forward with it and accept it, just like I did. I accepted the fact that I screwed up my entire life and potentially my kid's life. Once you can come forward to that and be brutally honest with yourself, then you can change. Then you got to put the work in every single day relentlessly to change. And you're going to get the naysayers, man. Like I'm sure Josh.
Yep.
It's like, especially working at the firehouse, man, you do anything outside of the norm. Like, what is this guy? This guy think he's better than us? This guy, like, what? You don't want to eat this cookie or this donut, or why are you always working out, or why are you doing this? It's like, I'm not better than anybody. I will help you guys, but the path I'm on is not, the biggest fear of mine is being mediocre or average. Like, I want to do something every single day that's going to push me forward. I want to constantly be uncomfortable. I want to intentionally suffer, meaning whether that's mentally or physically, for a purpose. And right now, my purpose is my wife and kids.
Man, that's so good. See, a lot of times you'll get haters in your friend group like that, whether it's at the firehouse or just in your friend group, or maybe even your cohorts. It's like, no, I'm not better than you. I'm just on a different path. That's the answer. You don't have to feel any guilt about it. You don't have to feel any shame about it. You don't have to feel bad that they're not like, you could want it for them, but here's the key in mentoring, coaching, or raising any kids. You can't want it for them more than they want it for themselves. 100%. So you can show the way, and like, you're not going to guilt them by saying, hey, you want to eat that donut, you want to go drink your night away and whatever, and not be, fully mentally present for your family or the next day of work. That's cool. I'm going to go do this, and no guilt either way. I'm just on a different path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And once you can accept that and like drown out the outside noise, control you can control, put your head down, put some blinders on, just focus on the work that you're getting done and make sure you're providing a result and an outcome from that work that you're putting in. It's like, it sounds simple, but it's so hard for people to do because everyone just wants to pull you back down. It's like Andy Frisella talks about crabs in a bucket, right? And the crab tries to come out and all the crabs pulling back down in the bucket. And it's like, it's this analogy I love. And I use that every single day.
Yep. Yeah. A lot of people don't know that the crab pots are designed for them to be able to get out once they've gotten in. The reason they don't is the other crabs pull them down as one tries to rise out. So that's a great analogy. Before we get to a little bit more of redemption, I want you to speak directly to first responders, because first responders, I think I even forget this sometimes, right? As we go on our day to day, for those of us that aren't in the first responding space, you guys see shit that none of the rest of us typically have to see, right? So from EMTs to firefighters to police officers to doctors to nurses, like, you guys see some of the worst human stuff that others won't probably ever have to see, or if they do, it'll be by accident. You guys sign up for that knowing you're going to see some shit. So speak directly to them and how they can best avoid what you've had to go through in your life with your wife, and some of the shame and guilt and all the different lessons you've learned.
Yes. I mean, the easiest way to kind of what we do honestly in reality is we get back in the fire engine and we try and have a laugh, as sick as it sounds, is because that's probably our sick, twisted way of healing and getting that out there. But some of that stuff weighs heavy on you. Children, domestic abuse, stuff like that. Heavy traumatic calls, unfortunate incidents. Maybe someone in the fire truck, went through that event and they just had to go relive it and see it firsthand. And you never know what someone's going through. So it's important to have an outlet, whether that outlet be a professional counselor, just another friend in the fire engine. It's important to explain how that's affecting you. And if you go home and you bring that to your wife and kids, that's your fault. Like, you just got to take ownership of that. You can't have the why me victim mentality. Like, 2 weeks after I got out of jail and I'm running a call for a domestic violence call, right? Like, how do you think that made me feel, right? But I'm not going to sit there and, carry that forever and just never show up because I'm going on these domestic violence calls. It's once you can, be like a healthy resource and just really kind of just embody whatever trauma you have, you can kind of learn to understand the resources out there to help you. But I mean, the more you just kind of talk about it and getting off your chest, that's just the way it helps me,
Yeah, no, it's so good. Because you do need a healthy outlet, and you're right. If you bring it home to your spouse, it is 100% your fault in a negative way. If you can take it home to your spouse in a fully processed way, from talking to a counselor or talking to that outlet, and you've coming from a healthy way to your spouse and talking about, because they want to know what's going on in your life and what's bothering you and what's not. But if you take that in an unhealthy way, it could end up in the position that you guys were in. So I just wanted to speak to.
Sorry, like traditional, I just thought of it right now, but like traditional counseling, like when they say, maybe you don't go straight home, maybe you pull off and you sit in the parking lot and you think about it or whatever it may be. Like for me, I'm like, no, that sounds horrible, man. I don't want to do that. That just makes it sound worse. And nothing against traditional counseling for those out there listening that are the counselors or whatever. But for me, now I just flip it. I'm just like, okay, I'm going to go home and I'm going to show up and whatever call or trauma that was going on that day, I'm going to go serve. Like, I'm just going to whatever I just went through, I'm going to understand that's my responsibility, is my profession, the oath that I took. And now I'm going to show up and be the best father that I can, be the best husband I can, be the best servant leader that I can. So I never end up in that situation. 80, I don't even, it's probably a made up stat, whatever, but a heavy, I don't even want to give it a percentage, but the heavy bulk of our traumatic incidences and calls are all alcohol related. So I kind of see the common theme over and over and over.
Mm-hmm.
I worked in the downtown area with all the bars, tourists, and all that stuff. And I started, thinking and really putting two and two together. I'm like, man, these are all alcohol related issues: domestic violence, car accidents, bar fights, whatever it may be. I'm like, there's your culprit right there. So how does that change me? Well, maybe you should stop drinking, right? Maybe you should heavily cut back on your drinking. Not that I was an alcoholic, but I consider myself a social drinker. Obviously, look where that led me, right? So social drinking healthy? Probably not. You got to be in control of your emotions and reactions. And I wasn't. You compare those two things, you're going to end up where I was. So.
Well, right. If you don't have a healthy outlet and you're storing all these traumas that you're seeing as a first responder, and you're using drinking as a coping mechanism, whether it's heavy or not, whether it's a social drink or you're fully embracing drinking a 12-pack daily or more, it's not a healthy outlet, and then you're going to spiral into doing something unhealthy, either to yourself or someone else.
And that's the culture of the fire service is, man, I'll say it. Culture of the fire service is drinking. How do you celebrate? You drink. How do you mourn? You drink. Retirement parties, drink. How do you hang out with your fireman buddies? You golf and you drink. It's just like all that stuff, right? It's pride yourself. Hey, who was the most hammered at that party, retirement party? Like, what happened, right? It's like, man, we got to change this culture, and culture change starts with yourself. You can't just walk in a room and start changing someone's culture in a business or whatever. So it starts with you. So if I can be an example to really embody and show, like, man, we don't have to drink. Like, what else is our purpose? What else are we doing here? Like, what else are you doing today? Like,
I don't think that's relegated to the fire service. I think that's everywhere. It's become so pervasive in our society. I've said this a couple of times because in Wisconsin, we pride ourselves on, like, literally there's Facebook page, like Wisconsin out drinking your state since 1848. Only 9 counties of the drunkest counties, they did the 50 drunkest counties in the U.S., 9 counties are outside Wisconsin. We wear it as a badge of honor. I realized that when first time I did 75 hard, I got to day 50 and I was like, I haven't gone 50 days without a sip of alcohol in all 50 straight days since I was 17 years old. And I was 41 at the time, my first time I did 75 hard. Right? So like now I've done 75 hard multiple times and done some of the phases and all that. And it's like, we have to normalize not drinking. We have to make it okay, because even at that time, especially here in Wisconsin, just like your guys at the firehouse, they give you shit for not drinking. They gave me shit for not drinking at the Super Bowl party. They give me shit for not drinking at a birthday party. They're like, look, no, I'm committed to this. I'm not going to cheat myself. So whether it's a 75 hard program or just choosing that alcohol is not going to be part of your life anymore, even if you weren't an alcoholic. I've had friends that I know that just chose to give up drinking because it wasn't serving them. They weren't alcoholics. They just chose in their life that wasn't serving them in any capacity. And yet we have people, until you make that declaration, people tend to like prod you and like give you shit just to see if they can get you to drink. And like, so it's interesting how far we've gotten into this society and how much alcohol is on every billboard, every commercial break, every different thing. And it's just pushed and pushed and pushed on us like we're supposed to have it in our everyday life. And it's, as you said, almost every call you're on is alcohol related.
And a solution to that for like first responders, whoever listening, is personal standards. Like, I preach this to the first responders group all the time. It's like, what's your personal standard with your health and fitness when they're saying, I'm getting tempted because there's cookies, chips, and ice cream at the firehouse and everyone's sitting down eating it and I don't want to partake. What are they going to think of me? It's like, you're lowering yourself to their standard. What is your personal standard? And do not deviate. Zero compromise and zero deviation from that. That's how you're going to show up and win. and they're going to respect that long term. You're just another average person sitting down and consuming and enjoying that. There's nothing wrong with consuming and enjoying that, but where I'm going and where I'm at right now doesn't include that. So that's fine. So if that's alcohol, if that's shitty food, if that's skipping a workout, whatever it may be, like, just understand, we make our guys come up with their personal standards, their non-negotiable items, and family core values. You have to have those 3 down, and then you live by that every single day.
Talk about non-negotiables really quick. I think this is a term, it's a term I use often, but I don't hear it enough. And I love that you guys at Superhuman Fathers are stating it. So what is your definition of non-negotiable, and how do you teach it to the people you're leading?
Yeah, so non-negotiable is something you do not deviate from. I will hit this every single day, no matter what. Like, no matter the environment, vacation, injury, sickness, whatever it may be, I will hit this for a passion, for a reason, right? So for me, pretty easy. You look at the pain I went through, and what I have to overcome, and where I'm going. I have no choice. These are non-negotiable items I will hit every day. So for me, I will provide an act of service every single day for my wife. I will tell my kids that I'm proud of them every single day. I will look my wife in the eyes and tell her I love her. I will work out. I will control what I eat. I will control what I read. I will control who I surround myself with every day. And if you just compound that, trust me, your life will be drastically different. In just under 2 years, my life is drastically different. For the, you can go to the firehouse I'm working right now and ask, it's like, has Chris changed in the last 2 years? It's like, they may not know the story, but if you look at the external and the outside and the relationships I've built and the people I've surrounded myself with, it is completely different because of non-negotiable items. And mostly, like, I'm sure Josh, you got to audit your circle. Who are you hanging out with? Because you're going to be, I don't forget the exact quote or saying, but you're going to be just like the 5 people you hang out with.
Yep. You'll be the sum of.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So that's so good. So non-negotiable really simply is you do not negotiate with yourself or anyone. This is what you do. That is really simply what Chris is saying there. And I heard Kobe talk about this in an interview once. So perhaps you want to negotiate the price you're willing to pay up front, and then you don't negotiate again. Because he was asked, he was on a late night show, I don't remember which one it was, but he was talking about his off-season program. And they asked, do you ever just give yourself a day off or, time off, or like, you've been working so hard, and why do you do that to yourself in the off-season? He goes, well, the object is to get better, to win another championship. He goes, I already negotiated as soon as the season ended what I was willing to do in the off season. Why would I allow myself to negotiate on a daily basis? I'll lose more times than I'll win if I'm doing that. Negotiate the price up front and then accept the journey from there.
I forgot about that was a good one. And keeping your word too to yourself is massive. I promised myself when I looked in the mirror in that conversation, I will always keep my word to my wife. Like, too many people, man, like, you harass your wife and your kids with your words of, I'm going to start Monday. I'm going to start this diet on Monday. I'm going to start a new career, whatever it may be. I'm going to be more patient. And then 3 days later, you fold and quit because adversity hits you right in the mouth. And that's how you respond. You quit. So if you quit every single time your wife sees you quit, everything happens. A little bit of respect goes down, 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 down. So hold your word to yourself and your wife. It's powerful.
Yes, 100%. Holding your word to yourself, keeping your word to yourself is how you build self-esteem, self-confidence, and self-efficacy. It's how you build it. You want to be a confident person? Keep your mother effing word to yourself every time. If you say you're going to brush your teeth twice a day, you brush your teeth twice a day. It's the little things that lead to the big things. Always. And that's so, like, people, how are you so confident? I keep my word. So I'm a man of my word. When I say I'm going to do something, I do it. That's how you become a confident human being. Not an arrogant human being, confident. And it's so simple that people, like, they're dumbfounded, right? But you added that other layers, keeping your word to your wife or keeping your word to your kids. Same thing. But here's the deal. If you keep your word to yourself, you'll always keep your word to your wife and your kids, because you're so dang used to it. Your word becomes so important to you that you won't accept anyone else in your life that doesn't keep their word. So it becomes very easy, like you said. All right. So going back, I know you learned a lot from this period in your life. And I want to talk a little bit about redemption mentally, physically, and spiritually, which I think you've done. So here's how I'm going to ask this question. What are you doing beyond what you've told us to make sure this never happens again for you?
Oh man, it's a great question. I'm trying to, this is honestly the first platform, and I'm excited for this one to get out there, because this is the first time I want to come out public and just say, here's my story. Judge or don't judge. Like, I'm here to help, to serve, and love you. This has changed my perception a ton on domestic violence, because I went on hundreds. I've been in the fire service. I've been 18 years old. I've been on hundreds of domestic violence. And what do we all say as type A individuals? Man, that guy's a piece of shit. I guess you wouldn't do that if that was me, right? Like, so it changed my perception about this a ton. We all make mistakes. It's just how you respond from that and how you overcome it. So it's, for me, this podcast, number one. Number two, me and Kimberly have committed to ourselves to teaching this and to teach others, like, hey, you can go through this domestic violence dispute as a husband and wife. Like, let us help you get out of this. So we have a speaking event in August that we're going to do at a couples mastermind for Superhuman Fathers that we're going to run. It's our first marriage mastery. So we want to, whether it's domestic violence or any dispute, like, how do you get out of the darkness as a husband and wife for your kids, not for you, so you don't have to see your kids raised in this trauma that you put them through. So we want to give people the tools and the steps to get out of it, because Kimberly has a story in herself, like what she's doing.
Mm-hmm.
She's getting certified in breath work for the healing on that side. She's starting her own business with that stuff. She's going to help women, all over. I know she is. She's going to crush that side of it. For me, continuing to preach my message within Superhuman Fathers, and hopefully just share the story as much as I can with other people. And one thing too I forgot to mention was, toward the end of those year classes of domestic violence, this is before SHF too, I started helping the guys on there on the calls. I was the only one on there still married and not drinking. And so I was like, I kind of just not really, I was trying to give them advice and help. And finally the instructor for this call was like, hey, do you want to start just jumping in and leading these things? I'm like, sure. So I started teaching these DV classes toward the end as a participant. I'm like, I think I can help some people. And then I went to Superhuman Fathers and it just exploded. So domestic violence or not, any vice, I want to make sure that no one has to go through what I went through, because that was a very low moment for me. And my job is to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone, especially in the first responders world, because I know I'm that guy that works a ton. I work a ton of overtime. I'm gone from my family all the time. I know the mental havoc it can wreak on you. I know when you show up, when you come home, I know your expectation. It's okay to sit on the couch, to have a beer, to, make sure your wife serves you, because you went to work, you went through the motions of work, you did the bare minimum, and then you come home and you expect all this shit. It's it's so backward. And that's how so many people are running their fire service careers. And I see it. There's great firemen out there. There's great organizations and cultures and standards, but there is a huge group of other guys that live like that and compound that stuff. So if they can just come out and say it, it's very, very uncommon for firemen to just, say, hey, I need help. Here's where I'm screwing up, man. I'm always fighting with my wife. I can't control my drinking. I can't control my nutrition. So if you can just come out and say it, I encourage you guys, man. You don't have to use Superhuman Fathers. You can use just an outlet for anybody. Just come forward with your story, share your story. It's selfish if you don't share your story, because I've been able to help so many people. I could have just folded and not helped anyone. So I encourage everyone to share their story. And that's where it's at with that one.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I want to say, obviously this is a vulnerable story for you to tell. And I could see some men, and women, but just judging, and I know you've dealt with that as well already. What I would say is the story it could happen to you. I mean, I've just seen so many men see red, including myself. I haven't been close to hitting my wife ever, but that vase the story thing, like I could see myself getting mad at a point in doing that and slapping that and that accidentally hitting my, like I could see that happening to any amount of men in our states of anger and pride and ego. And so before you judge Chris and his story, think about the times that you've been close, and that could have been you. Right? So you're not superhuman. Most of us, no, none of us are. We all make mistakes, like Chris mentioned before. And the fact of the matter is that we have to take control of our lives. We have to take control of our spiritual being, our physical being, our mental being. And if we take care of those things and we keep our word to ourselves, we're on a much better track to be the best husband and father and brother and friend that we can be. So I just want to state that out there, because I know that there could be people judging, and before you judge, you got to always look in the mirror first and make sure that you're doing all that you can to be the best version of yourself. All right. So final question before I let you go, brother. I don't ever prep anyone for this question, so I love to hear the answers. What's an unpopular belief that you hold to be true that most others would disagree with?
Oh man, this one's firsthand for me. Unpopular truth would be, for me, has been journaling. Like, I'm not sure if that's the answer you're looking for, but people say, write your thoughts, write how you're feeling. Like, that's just in my world and all that stuff, fire service, that's like so taboo. Like, man, that's like some hippie stuff, man. That doesn't work. And it's like, I'm telling you, man, if you guys can journal and visualize, you would have told me to journal and visualize 3 years ago, I would have laughed you out of the room. You go into any firehouse right now and tell them to journal and visualize every morning at 4:30 in the morning, and do it for 90 days. They'd be like, yeah, you're crazy, dude. He's like, so if you can really put pen to paper on your thoughts, how you're aligned, we preach full alignment, and then you can visualize where you want to go, where you want your family to be, your kids to be, and just visualize that, cast that vision of where you want your family to be. It sounds funky. It works. Trust me. I'm here right now. I casted a vision that I want to help people. I'm going to surround myself with people like Josh. I'm going to share this story. And here I am. So it works.
I can second that. I don't look for any answer. I like hearing everyone's answer, so it's different. But I will second the journaling thing, because it, and who knows? Well, just as an example, Matthew McConaughey's book, Green Lights, which was, bestseller on every list, that came from him keeping journals over the years. Right? And you look at his life and what he's manifested for himself, similar to me. Some of my journal entries from some of my toughest points in my life will definitely be in the book that I'm writing. So you just never know. So write those thoughts down, write those feelings down, write those visions down. Don't worry about if someone reads it or like, what am I writing? Like, just get it on there and you'll be shocked as to what actually comes out, especially after you get that first sentence down. First sentence is always the hardest.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll really appreciate your vulnerability and you taking the time to share the story. I know this will help many. Any other parting thoughts on your end?
No, I appreciate you having me on here. And yeah, I guess one last thought would be, if man, woman, father, husband, whatever it may be, for anyone going through a difficult time, like, just understand what you're doing right now, day by day in the moment, is going to create your future. So like, align your habits, thoughts, and actions day by day, and you're going to come out on top. Just surround yourself with the right people, come up with those non-negotiables, and you got to be able to share your story and get some help. So if anyone needs help out there, please reach out, Josh, me, whoever. We're here to serve.
Well, that's a great final thought. And where can they find you, Chris? Where can they follow you?
Easiest probably Instagram, just Flores_SHF.
Sounds good. So everybody follow Chris on Instagram. Thank you again for taking the time. And Spartans, remember that good and great are the enemies of possible. Share the shit out of this episode. It's going to help people. Lead like a Spartan today.